welcome to the Real CP Show. I'm your host, CP. In today's topic, a Benin coup that looked like who? Not the personnel who participated in this. The quietness from tethering and fleeing types, etc., who have anti-Black American animosity, no Pan-Africanism activated. Yes, no Pan-Africanism activated. Now, let me get this particular initial part out the way, because there are some people who truly do get into emotionary thought pattern responses, right? Oh my goodness, why people be talking about Beninese people? First of all, for those fools, go to Hades, right? Because there are numbers of good numbers of Beninese people, and there are some bad Beninese people, right? Like however, numbers of other personnel, coaching backgrounds, etc., etc. We're not talking about them, right? So we're not going to play that game. But the problem is that like some other tethering, fleeing type personnel, they're allowed to come through the cracks in certain parts of America, right? I'm not talking about some of the good ones, because the overall amount of fleers and tethers, they're allowed to come to America. Oh, they have an animosity toward Black Americans. I'm talking about more the ones that have a black skin, cosplaying Black Americans, right? Where they'll dip in and say, well, I'm kind of Black, when it's kind of Black to a point, when it's beneficial resources, right? To get those kind of freebies and things like that and get in different areas, right? Startup organizations, entities, organizations, be able to slot under HBCU banner, utilizing Black, and you get the point, right? When it's beneficial for them, right? But same time, jump back out and say, no, I am of that tribe or tribalism, right? I am of that particular background of people, right? You see, so they play both sides, these tethers, these demonic tethers, these fleers, right? And they know overall, millions of Black Americans have a gullibilistic mentality to keep thinking that just because someone had the skin of Black don't mean they have your back, right? Case in point, right? Let me throw this out to you. I did a show topic on this particular Beninese fleer, or his parents fled, that he knew better not to ever go back to Benin because they look at him like he's crazy because he's a tether fleer coon. Make sure you can see this. Give me 1 second here. One moment here. All right, make sure you can see this. All right. Maximize that. This right here. Again, I did a show topic on this specifically called Frank Zanu, whatever name, this hateful anti-American or anti-Black American Benin fleer or tether, right? And this was the image I put on here. I know I am technically a fleer from Benin, while I have the nerve to spew out vitriol toward Black Americans who built up America before I was ever thought of. But I say they have no culture, while I come from tribalism, while I parakeet other topics, also pretending I am smart. Because he comes from Benin as well, and his parents fled when he was a young fellow, and I guess situation with Benin, some kind of civil war that was going on, not a long time ago, right? And again, I'm not talking about some of the good brothers and sisters that, hey, opportunities came up where they were able to come to America, but they understood that without Black Americans and what Black Americans have having to go through for centuries and still present, many would not have the opportunity to come over. I'm not talking about those. Those are very small, because within Americanism, the supremacist system will not allow a collective ones that not have animosity toward Black Americans, because many types of fleas and tethers again have an animalistic animosity toward Black Americans because they are jealous because Black Americans again do not flee. Right. And so he's been doing his little anti-American Black rhetoric on various types of media, podcasts, whatever. But he was allowed to go under the banner of Black, go to some decent colleges and travel throughout different places, right? Slide under the Black banner, being used as a coon tether Sambo, right? Because when you look at him, yuck. He would not be taken serious of any major reality type of system in America, right? The Klan member, see, he's lucky. See, he's not around certain Klan members because they will remind him, look, Negro animal, you just another version of a Negro type animal, right? So he makes sure not to go to certain places to get reminded, right? So I just want to relay that over. That's a podcast I did on that because he's been spewing out various anti-Black American rhetoric consistently, right? And I'm like, you're a part of fleeing us because he won't go back to Benin and fix their problems going on, right? Because he does not care about overall Beninese people because he's a Sambo, right? So I just want to get that particular part out the way on that topic I did on my show, The Real CP Show. And he's did some other shows talking about anti-American anti-Black American animosity rhetoric and all this kind of stuff like that, right? So I just kind of get that part of the way on that situation. See, watch this. He won't sit there and go fix his numbers of other African counterparts like this, right? Nope, he gets quiet. You like, hey man, why don't you go help some of your African counterparts like this over there, an ancient continent of Africa? He gets quiet, right? Because he knows that he doesn't care. He doesn't care, right? He does not care. And by the way, in Benin, which was a former per se French colony of Dahomey, the kingdom of Dahomey, which also was a major significant exporter of slaves. Let's repeat that again. The kingdom of Dahomey, which is Benin, which is former Dahomey of Republic of Dahomey or Kingdom of Dahomey, a major player of slavery, of exporting slavery in a mid-Atlantic slave trade, right? And so just recently, after all these years and generations, finally some people say, you know what, let's try to offer some kind of pathway to citizenship for the African diaspora. Gigantically late, all this time. Some people say, oh, now the thing about, like, somebody said, what about Ghana? That has nothing, that's Euro return and Euro bold, wherever it is. That had nothing to do with specifically going towards citizenship. That was more saying, hey, African diaspora people, however it is, come over here, pay whatever this, amount of money and resources and stuff like that, jump through a few hoops, et cetera, stay over here. Then you put in your application over here for this and all that. And then we may allow a few of you to become citizens. That's not true citizenshipness, allowability, people. That's saying, come over here, bring that money, help build up various parts in this country, and we might think about getting your citizenship. But there's been many numbers of cases where people have been setting up businesses, building up houses, and being hiring certain people, just getting them off that land, get them off their houses, shut down businesses. Oh my goodness, they don't want to talk about that. And Sierra Leone is another one that was offering, I guess you would call per se citizenship, which is kind of a pseudo citizenship, right? Because that's still just recent type stuff. So there's really truly have not been any major direct citizenship offered by some real type of opportunities for African diaspora in various parts of Africa. The only thing comes close to the Benin, and that's recent. Like Sierra Leone, that's recent, right? Because you got people saying, wait a minute now, our economy is not the best, so we may have to open up these doors to certain types of African diaspora, but we really want to try to see about the Black Americans. We know they're about something, right? So I just want to get that part of the way too. Don't get me wrong. For those of Black Americans who can sit there and try to take advantage of certain Beninese citizenship, their requirements, and Sierra Leone, but like, hey, do they thing if they feel like they want to do that, right? The ones that think about that, but also look at their requirements, because sometimes it's not like, wait a minute now, why Black Americans this even got to pay, and some other African diaspora, but got to pay an exorbitant amount of fees to try to get some kind of pathway to citizenship. Now, Benin, I think they said it wasn't expensive, but I don't know if they went up or not. So I just want to get that part out of the way first. Now, let me go ahead and share my screen since I've got some of those things out the way and get into this particular video. And I'm utilizing this as time, peace, purpose, and I'm also utilizing this for fair usage doctrine, or under the fair usage doctrine. All right.
Shifting focus to the African continent, Benin's military is searching for the fugitive soldiers behind that foiled coup attempt over the weekend that left several people dead. At least a dozen plotters had been arrested, and by Monday, all hostages, including high-ranking officers, had been released. According to loyalist military sources, the leader of this failed coup reportedly remains on the run. Now, the government stated that there have been casualties on both sides of the government forces and the mutinous soldiers. The official figure of the death toll is not yet known. Benin's President Patrice Talon and members of the government observed a moment of silence for the victims of Sunday's attempted coup. In Benin's biggest city and commercial hub, Cotonou, supporters of President Talon held a demonstration denouncing the attempted coup. Residents and organizers, they led chants condemning what they described as imposters and murderers behind Sunday's events.
The entire population is concerned, and we never want power by force in Benin again. We never want a coup in Benin again. We never want our fundamentals, our democratic achievements to be taken hostage again. That's why we have mobilized massively to say no.
And by the way, look at the background. And so it's interesting that you have some people, right, that be trying to talk bad about Black Americans. And you look at this background, I mean, there are some people that got some nerves. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily this particular Beninese type person or personnel, but I'm just saying if it applies, right? And here's the crazy part about it. The demographics of Beninese people in America, it's even hard to even try to find that out. That's how small they are, right? Because when you talk about Somalia, which is a whole different situation to have the numbers of them, especially in Minnesota, and some other places, but places going to Minnesota, they have been catching it with all this fraudulent activity by quite a number of Somalians, which is a whole different topic because how many of them have a blatant anti-Black American hatred as well as vitriol, because numbers of them are also fleers. And they're also latecomers to America that can't fix their tribalism problems going on in Somalia as well. Right? I make that point because numbers of Beninese people also have their own clan, tribes, wherever it is as well. So there is no pan-Beninese love for various types of tribes. They got their own thing on individual as well. Just like Somalians got their own various type tribes and clans as well. But Black Americans are told just basically romanticized in general by Africa as if Africa is some utopianness and pan-African love. Well, you got various sectionality of various regions of Africanism that can't stand one another. But Black Americans, they think, are so naive and ignorant to not see through these tactics. And it's an insult to the Black American ancestors, by the way.
To the enemy as one man, to show our support to the head of state, Patrice Talon, our support to the armed forces of Benin, and our support to all the Beninese people.
As security forces stepped up vigilance around key institutions, including the Constitutional Court, newspaper headlines declared the situation totally under control. Residents said the events were shocking, but reinforced their support for the government. Many even said that the incident had public backing for President Talon.
We really wish courage to President Talon, who has unwavering support. The people are with him. You saw yesterday, despite what happened, the people didn't even know. It was rather a surprise that people were experiencing. People were wondering why. We didn't need this. I believe it strengthens us. And with heads held high, we support the President of the Republic. We will fight as needed so that Benin is respected.
In wee hours of Sunday morning, the soldiers, calling themselves the Committee for Refoundation, stormed the national television station and announced the removal of President Patrice Talon, dissolution of the government, and suspension of all state institutions. Just hours later, the coup was foiled by Benin's military, supported by Nigerian air and ground forces, which launched a series of attacks against fleeing mutineers.
And by the way, that is some insulting too. That's why, again, there is no Pan-Africanism. And I'm going to sit there and show something in just a little bit, right? Again, there is no Pan-Africanism. And you're talking about their higher system is telling Nigeria to go over to Benin and help them out. And you got all that tribalism going on in Benin, and some numbers of, however, various Nigerian personnel say, hey, man, this corruption is rampant over in various parts of Nigeria, right? And let's not talk about how the murdering that's going on and assaults and this and the fraud going on in various parts of Nigeria. Again, we're not talking about some of the good brothers and sisters over there. So we're not going to play that deflection tactic, because the people who know there are certain numbers of Nigerians that are known to be animosityness of anti-Black Americanists, that how many of them fled from Nigeria with major tribalism problems. So we know they can't be talking about nobody, right? Calling Black Americans akatas, which is a slang anti-Black American terminology, but at the same time, they can't fix their own tribalism problems over in various parts of Nigeria. The nerve of some of them as well. Let's not get that confused, by the way. Let's continue.
The president has vowed to punish mutineers and ensures the safety of hostages believed to be senior military officers. The UN Secretary General expressed his deep concern at the attempt to unconstitutionally seize power in Benin.
Our representative for West Africa and the Sahel, Leonardo Santos Shimao, is actively engaging with national authorities and state and other stakeholders, as well as regional and international partners, to support efforts to restore peace and stability in Benin.
Okay. The West African nation has witnessed multiple coups following its independence from France in 1960.
But at the same time, who are the personnel that are doing that? Who do they look like? Who do they look like? Number of the personnel in Benin, right? They're not European foreigners per se, right? That you see are doing this left and right. Now, I don't want to go off and go somewhere another different direction, right? So there is some nerve when people try to talk about Black Americans. There is nothing of any comparison to the type of stuff going on in various sections of Africa, like the Benin situation, or like Nigeria, or things going on in Ghana, things going on in Ethiopia, things going on in Eritrea, things going on in Somalia. There is, again, I'm talking about some of the good brothers and sisters over there. I'm relaying, because some people who know what I'm talking about is true. There are some people from those countries that know what is true as well. But again, in this system supremacy, which is the most awesome mental manipulation force that has ever existed, they like for Black Americans to not talk about anything else, right? Now, if you're talking about Black Americans left and right, or allow other people to talk about Black Americans 1,000 different times up and down, that's acceptable, right? So that goes, right? Keep the spotlight off of anything else. See how that game goes on that. But let me sit there and show you some, because in that first video I sit there and showed you, they were some, oh my goodness, we're for the President Talon and everything, we're for them, we're for him and everything like that. See that lie again? No, that old lie. Again, situations like that. Give me a second. Let me see if I still have that here. Give me one moment here, because there's one other thing I want to show. Before I do that, let me sit and show you this quick video. Why is Nigeria's deployment to Benin controversial? Because, right, one of the people that was talking about some of the people in certain parts of, especially the western part of Africa, western part, whatever, however it go, that was Nigeria that was supposed to be helping out with the coup situation and whatever else, right? And isn't that the kettle calling the pot a kettle, right? Here we go.
We have our own problems going on here, like the bandits issues.
It's a good development for Nigeria and West Africa and in entirety because we can't fold our arms as a big brother in West Africa and allow these military juntas happen across West Africa.
Nigerian military forces being able to intervene and help other people's countries with their issues without helping our own country with our issues. It's weird.
It was important to intervene and restore democracy because of the stability that it provides. While the critics have a point to make the argument that, we have enough problems, within our country, many of those problems have a regional and continental approach, and you can't deal with them effectively except you have some sort of a regional approach to containing them. To use the euphemism, the biggest dog in the yard, to throw its weight around the continent a lot more, to provide a lot more leadership within the ECOWAS, to provide a lot more leadership even within the Sahel.
Now, I don't know what kind of nonsense they were relaying. I know he's not talking about Nigeria being the big dog, and he said continent. Make sure that didn't slip past a lot of people. He said the continent. He'd be like, Nigeria is the largest populace, but they are not the big dog in Africa. Please. And how many numbers of situations going on in Nigeria where you got however personnel with major tribalism going on, corruption and etc. going on, extortion, etc. Right? The nerve of that. And then when the Trumpism, Trumpism is sitting there saying, hey, numbers of Nigerians, stop sitting there unaliving our Christians. You better stop it, or we're going to come over there and start whipping and whopping over there. You understand, right? And that president, they're like, okay, all right, don't come over here and doing that to us, right? Right? I'm just saying. And this recently had some airstrikes that was allowed to come from the U.S., however it is, whatever personnel to Nigeria, do some airstrikes against what's supposed to be some kind of terroristic group. Again, who they look like, some other personnel within Nigerianness, right? The one supplies to. But then you have some personnel like, wait a minute, they got to look at them. They ain't got nothing to do with us. That's a different kind of tribe. Those are those tribes. You see how that goes, right? It's a different kind of tribe when it's like that part. But at the same time, when it's about, oh, we're successful, we're doing this, then it's like, oh, we are Nigerians and stuff like that. You see how that game goes, right? But say, for instance, like this, but let's see something.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black. It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my...
And where's all these people at in this Fleer tethering class, right? When Biden was saying that, where all they at? Where was all them at? Huh? Where's all these fleers and tethers at? But as soon as the Trumpism comes in effect, oh my goodness, he's sitting there sending Nigerians and sending Ghanaian people and sending Somalians and sending Ethiopians, and you get the point, right? Oh my, where the Black American Negroes? I mean, where are our brothers and sisters at? No, delineation. Y'all being divisive. How about go to HELL for those tethers and fleers who try to play that tactic, right? But at the same time, they're divisive in their own countries that they fled from. And there's division in various other countries in various sections of Africa. There is no Pan-Africanness over in Africa. There's 50 plus countries over there with their own type of backgrounds and thoughts and running of the governments and politicalness, such like they are not Pan-Africanism together. But again, these tethers and fleers that fled from various sections of Africa, that fled from various parts of the Caribbean, to the ones it applies to, and other places, they really do think, again, Black Americans are beyond stupid not to see through these tactics. Well, other people can have their own situations for themselves and not try, don't put everybody in some African box. Don't put everybody in a Caribbean box. But Black Americans are supposed to be the openness to all boxes because they have black skin. Other people have black skin. The ones who have black skin. Just get out of here with that nonsense, right? But this is where they think Black Americans are stupid. On that overall, on that, they really do think that. I think one other last thing I think I want to show is the article on that part. And this will probably be the last thing here today on this one, on this situation. Make sure you can see. Make sure you can see that. All right, give me a second here. Make sure. All right. Okay. Benin Coup left several unalive. Its leader still at large. Several people were confirmed unalive, and others are still being held hostage after a coup attempt was foiled in Benin. The lead mutineer is still reported to be on the run. So go through this kind of fast. I'll go through sections of it. The government of Benin confirmed on Monday that there had been casualties on both sides after the attempted coup was put down with the help of foreign military intervention at the weekend, but the leader of the Punch, which means basically overthrowing, reportedly remains on the run. The small group of soldiers who organized the mutiny, who looked like who again, planned to remove the president of the republic from office, to subjugate the republic's institutions, and to challenge the established order, said the government secretary general, etc., etc. They initially attempted to neutralize or kidnap several generals and senior army officers. He continued, naming Army Chief of Staff, etc., etc., person, and National Guard Chief, person, as those abducted from the Dahomey military base. President, Benin. Benin coup leader, Tigri still at large. As of Monday, at least 14 people had been arrested in connection with the attempted uprising, according to the government. But the whereabouts of would-be coup leader, Lieutenant Colonel Pascal Tigri, a former artillery officer and member of Presidential Talents Protection Detail, remain unknown, as did the fate of a number of hostages. So he was a member of the President Talon's Presidential Detail. This is why you have to watch people, and you can truly never get relaxed around people. Well, that's the logical thing to do. This guy was sitting there on the Presidential Detail. And one of the last things I wanted to show in this particular article, why did Nigeria and ECOWAS intervene? But the coup was put down by Beninese troops with the help of air and ground forces from neighboring Nigeria, deployed as part of an economic community of West African states, ECOWAS. Where did it say the economic community of all types of Africa? Nope. You said it goes, right? Which also includes forces from Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Sierra Leone. Nigeria and the ECOWAS regional bloc. Not all blocks, right? Not all African blocks, right? Nope. No Pan-Africanism activated, people. Hadn't intervened in a member state since 2017 when they sent troops to Gambia to force then President such and such person to vacate power following his election loss. Recent West African coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, Guinea, and Gabon didn't lead to interventions. Let's not minimize that. Recent West African coups. We're not gonna minimize that part, right? The coup, wait a minute, hold on. Didn't lead to interventions, prompting analysis to criticize ECOWAS for lack of consistency. The coup in Benin is one too many, such and such person. A senior security researcher at Dakar Base Institute for Security Studies, such and such told such and such person. Entity, Nigeria cannot afford to be encircled by hostile governments, right? But again, you got Lears and various others, tethers, that got the nerve to try to talk about Black Americans because they themselves fled, right, from their countries. And again, we're not talking about some of the good brothers and sisters from, like Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Eritrea, Somalia, Ethiopia. Because those are the main ones that are allowed overall to come to America, African immigration wise. Those are the main blocks on that. But within those blocks are collectively quite a number of tether fleers, right? They're allowed to come to America to get free resources, to open up businesses, to get inside businesses, to get inside certain parts of politicalness, to sit there and again be a bufferingness against Black Americans, the one it applies to. And from this sand related to in certain parts of the Caribbean, by the way, that also has some tetheringness and fleers in themselves as well. Again, I'm not talking about some of the good brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, because there's no pan-Caribbean love either. Look what's still going on in Cuba, right? Cuba is definitely could be a major superstar out in the Caribbean. And you best believe there are some Caribbean type personnel that have some hatred toward hatred toward Cuba and some jealousy, right? But we don't want to talk about that part. So, but somebody tell you again, oh my goodness, in this situation, you can't be talking about the Beninese people and stuff like that because it's not all. I'm like this. Yeah, we're not gonna play that tactic. Not gonna play that tactic at all. I thank you for tuning in to the Real CP Show. No Pan-Africanism going on.